Thank you. I have some housekeeping announcements. Please note the locations of the fire exits. Please make sure that your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. The meeting is being live streamed and an audio recording being made. Please switch your microphone on when addressing the council and off when you have finished speaking. In relation to all points of order, members will need to indicate first the rule and second the way in which it has been broken, as is required by the Constitution. This will enable me to rule accordingly. Please can I remind members to talk to the point and Cabinet members to ensure that their announcements are just that. Please can I ask members to be mindful of your comments this evening, as we are in a pre-election period for Colgate and Rusper, and therefore I will not tolerate any political commentary during this time. Lastly, I would remind everybody to conduct themselves with professionalism and courtesy, ensuring that all discussions are respectful and appropriate at all times within this chamber. Apologies for absence. We have apologies from the following: Councillor Paul Clark, Councillor Ruth Fletcher, Councillor Anthony Frankland, Councillor Nick Grant, Councillor Tony Hogden, Councillor Claire Vickers, Councillor Tricia Utang, and Councillor Mike Croker. We now turn to the minutes of the previous meeting, which you'll find on pages 5 to 30 of your packs. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February and the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 19th of March be approved as correct records. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bevis. Does anybody wish to comment on the accuracy of the minutes? No, thank you. Are you all agreed that I may sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 3, to receive declarations of interest from members. Does any member have any interest to declare in respect to any item on tonight's agenda? No, thank you very much. We now move on to item 4, announcements. I have 2 announcements. Firstly, it is lovely to be here in the chamber, the new chamber. It's a wonderful building, and I would like to thank all the officers for all the work they've done in getting us here. Secondly, I'd like to announce the sad passing of a councillor, Jack Saheed, who was a councillor between 2019 and 2021 in Horsham District Council. He sadly passed away recently, age 83. He'd previously also been the mayor of Worthing, and he leaves a wife and 4 children. Leader, do you have any announcements?
Nothing this evening, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Cabinet members' announcements? Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. I wanted to let you know that Horsham District Council has gained its bronze certification in carbon literacy, making HDC officially a carbon literate organisation. So far, 63 people in our organisation have been trained, including the senior leadership team, heads of service and myself. And this number is about to rise to 76 shortly, as a further 13 people are currently in the middle of the course. While every service now has at least 1 climate champion in addition to the head of service, our aim is to have at least 1 person in each smaller department too. Currently, 2/3 of all departments now have a climate champion. The reason it is important is that it helps us to ensure climate and nature are represented across all the council disciplines, which will in turn mean that work towards our targets will include carbon reduction contributions that otherwise might be missed. As part of becoming certified, each person has to commit to a new personal action that they will take, such as how they get to work, for example, as well as contribute to a group action where they have to influence a change within their team or how they work with residents. Some examples of actions taken by HDC staff are investigating how to move operations to more climate-friendly practices, not printing as much, for example, or car sharing for visits, disseminating information to residents about reducing their carbon along with their bills, or information about the environmental and social benefits of certain initiatives we're doing. Also building more carbon-friendly infrastructure, for example, play parks and walkways. Our next step is to become silver level certified, which requires 30% of staff to have completed the course. This is about 130 individuals, and we are already almost 2/3 of the way there. Finally, we are going to offer the training to parish and neighbourhood councillors and community groups by the end of the year to help them on their climate journey, and as part of the wider collaboration evident throughout our district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick announcements from the enterprise team. The Rural England Prosperity Fund allocation for 25-26 was confirmed this week as £261,477. Don't know why it's an odd number. We'll shortly be setting up panel meetings for the year and organising advertising. This funding goes to support businesses set in the south of the district, and I'm hoping that the ward members there will promote it as well when it comes through. The second one is about Sussex 6, which is a fantastic initiative which sees venues signing up to take at least 6 locally produced products and promoting them. And this initiative continues to be promoted across Sussex in various forms, and is going into other districts. So Horsham have really led on this, and it's just done a fantastic job. Future collaborations with multiple council agendas, sector support, sustainability, visitor economy, wellbeing, and business skills. If you do have any food or drink producers in your wards, please let them know about the project, as well as skills workshops, the networking. These are, I would say every 2 months there is a meeting. It's where brewers, for example, come together, and they've created an event which is happening in the autumn, which is the Horsham Tap Takeover, and where winemakers at the last one were starting to plan a wine festival for the region. So it really is a great initiative. The enterprise team met with Gatwick representatives yesterday, who were so pleased with the Sussex House restaurant that they've introduced on the back of Sussex 6. It's clearly caught the imagination of the airport industry, as reps from Edinburgh, for example, are visiting this week to see the restaurant with a view to introducing something similar around Scottish food and drink up there. So it's a real success story from us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any other Cabinet members have any announcements? Okay, Chief Executive? No, thank you. We now move on to item 6 on pages 31 to 32, recommendations from Cabinet. I will now hand over to Councillor Skipp to introduce this report and move the recommendation 6A.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Do you have a seconder? Do you have a seconder?
Oh yes, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn, do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak later if necessary.
Thank you. Sorry, please carry on, Councillor Skipp. Introduce the report.
Thank you very much again, Chairman. This report came from the report that I gave to Cabinet 2 weeks ago, and no doubt you've all seen it because it was in the Cabinet papers. It set out a revised approach to the delivery of the refurbishment of the Capitol Theatre following the decision made in October 2024 to suspend the original project as a result of increased project costs. The report set out that improvements to the theatre will be delivered over 2 periods in 2025 and 2026 at the total project cost of £10.2 million. It primarily focuses on the works that are proposed to be undertaken in 25-26, and a report on the works proposed for 2026 will be subject to a report to Cabinet and Council in July 25 and or October 25. Perhaps I could just expand a little on the works that we're proposing, so that everybody knows that what was first proposed is still going forward, and we are still looking forward to an excellent result next year of the refurbishment of the capital, which I'm sure residents will appreciate no end. And we did get a good public survey in August, September and October 24, which actually was positive. The general feeling, though, was that the capital needed some love and attention, and this is what is going to happen, and this is what we're planning. Can I just say the timescales for those who are listening and who are interested in the public? In April to September, that's this year, we will close the auditorium between April and May, and during this period, asbestos in the roof and crawl spaces will be removed. We will also take the opportunity to fabric repair the worst of the seats so that they are of a reasonable standard for the planned autumn and panto season. Essential repairs and improvements have to be made to the roof in order to ensure that it is watertight, and there will be a structural survey of the roof to ensure that it will accommodate the heating that we are proposing. Surveys will be carried out, particularly fire compartmentation, plaster adhesion, acoustics, paint testing, and we have had since the cabinet meeting a mechanical, electrical and public health report of some 884 pages, which, as you can imagine, takes some working through. And that was only 2 weeks ago, and I'll come on to that in a minute. Equipment needs replacing. We have had to replace some of the equipment in the film studio because it was too old and it stopped working. And this is one of the problems. This is an old building, and an old building does need help at times to look a little bit better, and in medical terms feel a little bit better. And this is where we are. We have an old building which we need to make 100% sure we have surveyed properly and we know what's happening with it. So some of the equipment in the film studios, as I say, stopped working, and we've had to replace that equipment. The expectation is the cinema can remain operational through 2025, but it's dependent again on the requirements of asbestos removal, containment, and if necessary, they will close along with the auditorium in April and May. But it's only April and May, and we once again will start our programme in September, October, and run it right the way through the panto season. So I'll come back to the mechanical, electrical and public health report. There were two aspects to this. One is that the roof probably will not support the weight of the heat pumps that we were considering. They are large, that we required 5 of them, and it is felt that the roof will not support that weight at all. The other was that we undertook a pre-app survey, a pre-app inquiry into the planning for putting hot air or the air pumps on the roof. Unfortunately, there is apparently no way that we will receive planning agreement to putting those boilers, heaters on the roof. So that means that in the next few months, we will be looking at other alternative methods. We are still on course to reduce our carbon footprint, and that is what we will be aiming to do when we come back to the Council and Cabinet with a response. And I know that that is disappointing, but it is part of due diligence. It has to be done, and that is what our contractors, Wilmot Dixon, have advised us. The second phase will take place next year, and again the auditorium will be closed. There will be a complete refurbishment. It's going to look fantastic. I've seen some of the drawings. Replacement of all seating, plus increased capacity, improved accessibility, redecoration, recarpeting, plus improvements to lighting. The cinemas will have a complete refurbishment. This includes replacement and reduction of seating to offer an enhanced customer experience, redecoration, recarpeting, and replacement, and improvement to projectors and audiovisual equipment. Again, this is something that I think the public are expecting. Public spaces will be improved. There will be refurbishment across all public areas, including the bar, box office, and first floor foyer. The revolving front door will also be replaced, as its function has been highlighted as a safety issue. So you won't be able to walk in and go round and round in that door now. Toilets will be reconfigured to increase the number, and a changing places facility will be added. Power upgrading of the power supply may be necessary, and we intend to improve the facade and improve signage and small scale enhancements. A lot of work next year to bring to the public what we promised in last year. Obviously there will be change in the heating, but that is something that we will come back to you with information. So that is the proposal. The actual council is being asked tonight to reprofile 0.846 million of capital budget for the refurbishment works, from moving it from 2026-27 to 25-26 to create a total capital budget in 25-26 of 1.526 million. And you will see the reasons set out below, and I don't propose to enhance those reasons anymore. They are before you, and that is my report and recommendation. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Skipp. I will now move to open the debate to the floor. Councillor Serkis.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say, when I had the privilege to go to the Oscars ceremony, I realised just how dreadful the fabric was, and I'm sure a lot of members did. And of course, it was heightened when we were invited to win a prize by identifying the worst seating that we could find in the auditorium. I was convinced I was going to win, but apparently not. Somebody else found a worse example. So it's well and truly in need of refurbishment. One of the things I was reminded of in the auditorium was the Art Deco features. And I'm hoping the Cabinet member can assure us that the Art Deco features will be preserved and enhanced, and remind me, and I should know the answer to this, whether the building is in any way listed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis.
Yeah, I can confirm, and I assure you that we're not going to lose the Art Deco inside that. I think it's wonderful. Everybody I go there with and take as guests love it. It would be terrible if we had to get rid of it. So no, there is no plan to remove it. As far as listed, of course, listed is they can be locally listed as well as more nationally listed, and locally it's obviously quite an important feature in the town. So yes, we will keep the Art Deco. Whether we keep the same colours, I'm not quite sure.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed to hear, obviously, that we're not going to be able to use air source heat pumps to be able to heat the new building, but no doubt we will come up with some ingenious alternative. However, on the whole, I fully support this new refurbishment scheme and recognise that the capital provides a cultural centre for all ages and tastes within the district. Whilst I will be keeping an eye on any escalating future costs, I fully endorse the present budget of 1.2 million and look forward to experiencing the new seating and the refurbished facilities. Whilst I'm speaking, I sincerely hope that the new authority taking over in a couple of years will sustain the same care and protection that this council has provided, and similarly recognise the capital's importance within the community of Horsham.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll.
Can I just reply to that?
Please
Thank you
do,
very much for
Councillor
that, Councillor Knoll. It's gratifying to know that you'll be keeping an eye on the finances, and I can assure you that I will be as well. But I think you're right. It is very important in the community for all the community to avail themselves of it, and I'm delighted that we're going to be able to progress it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to? Councillor Minto.
Thank you, Chair. Just thought it was appropriate to reiterate, thanks to the Herculean effort of the officers and everyone else involved in this, because they were thrown a massive curveball and a huge challenge, and have come back with something that is comparable, phased, and I think the decision making and the effort needs to be applauded for everyone involved.
Thank you very much. I'll convey that to the officers. We will be putting together a comms agenda item, or an item on the agenda, because I think it's important that people know what's happening rather than wonder. So that's what we'll do.
Any other comments from the floor? I'll now invite Councillor Blackburn to speak as the seconder to the motion. Do you wish to speak?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you have any further closing comments, Councillor Skip? No, okay. Let's suggest we just move now to the vote. I'll now put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 31 of your agenda, please show. Looks pretty unanimous to me. The motion is carried. Thank you all very much. We'll now move on to item 6B, the refurb and leasing of premises. Council is asked to approve the recommendations on page 32 in the agenda pack. The appendix to the report contains exempt information, and I trust that, having had sight of the figures contained in the exempt appendices, members will not need to refer to them, and we can deal with this matter in open session. However, should members wish to discuss any of the exempt information, we will need to resolve to exclude the press and the public. Therefore, I trust that we can proceed to debate this item in open session, and can I please ask members to be conscious of this? I will now hand over to Councillor Knowles to introduce this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. This item is in relation to the refurbishment and leasing of a prominent Horsham building. It's commercially sensitive, as the chairman has mentioned, and you should have received all the exempt details in your papers. Firstly, I'd like to thank again all the officers, the many officers involved in getting us to this stage. This is a fantastic opportunity for Horsham and a much needed alternative leisure facility. Approval is sought for capital funding required to put the premises in a condition that will enable the letting to proceed. The works relate to repairs on the roof structure, windows, doors and paving. It is proposed that these works, along with a contribution to the proposed tenants' fit-out works, will enable the leasing of the premises to a national entity for a minimum 15-year period. These actions are essential to ensure the successful revitalisation of the premises and its transition into a thriving leisure facility, benefiting both the local community and the council's long-term interests. As mentioned, the financial elements relating to this item are detailed in the exempt appendix, and we cannot discuss this in the open meeting. However, I can point out that although this is outside of the approved capital budgets for the year, it does provide for rental income to commence in year 2 and for the cost of capital to return positive in year 10. So I support putting the vote for the recommendations included in the report following approval by Cabinet. If you are happy to support those, they're on page 32 of your pack. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate? Later. Thank you very much. Right, I now open to the floor of the debate. Does anybody wish to speak? Right. Okay. I suggest therefore we move straight to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 30 for the agenda, please show. Thank you. Any against? No. Okay. Any abstentions? One abstention. Right. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, recommendations of the committee. We will now go on to the item in relation to the Constitution. I will therefore hand over to Councillor Walters, Chairman of the Governance Committee, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Councillor Walters.
Thank you, Chair. At its meeting on the 24th of March 2025, the Governance Committee approved the referral of the new Constitution as amended to full Council for formal adoption. The Constitution has been divided into different sections, grouping similar themes together, and I would like to highlight the most significant changes. The key decision threshold. First, the key decision threshold, being that financial level at which Cabinet must take decisions collectively, has been increased from 250,000 to 500,000. This is to ensure that decisions are taken in a timelier manner, as we have only 6 Cabinet meetings per year, and the timing needs for certain decisions do not always align with the schedule of meetings. This will reduce the requirement to convene special Cabinet meetings on short notice. Importantly, Cabinet members will be responsible for all matters up to the new level. Financial delegations. Chief Finance Officer's delegations have been expanded. For example, the CFO may approve the receipt and expenditure of grant funding for existing projects and services up to 500,000. This was previously set at 250,000 and has been increased in line with the increase in the key decision threshold. Additionally, the CFO may authorise the receipt and expenditure of grant funding from public sector bodies.
Again, this is to ensure that decisions are taken in a timelier manner, as we have only 6 full council meetings per year, and the timings needed for certain decisions do not always align with the schedule of meetings. This will reduce the requirement to convene extraordinary meetings on short notice. Importantly, these delegations must be exercised in consultation with the leader, the Cabinet Member for Finance, and the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Policy and Scrutiny. 2 Policy and Scrutiny Committees will be established. This is because the 2024 LGA peer review recommended that the current scrutiny arrangements be reviewed to create a more robust scrutiny process. The committees will each have 15 members to cover the Council's 3 directorates: Communities, Place and Resources. They will be called the Finance and Performance Policy and Scrutiny Committee and the Communities and Place Policy and Scrutiny Committee. The new structure seeks to allow for greater member involvement, enhance the scrutiny function, and provide a forum for meaningful policy developments. PDAGs. The disbanding of PDAGs is to be replaced by hybrid all-member briefings consultation sessions alongside the revised scrutiny structure. The reason for this is that the 2024 LGA peer review observed that the position of the PDAGs is unclear in the decision-making process, and PDAGs do not always result in meaningful engagement. Additionally, the revised scrutiny structure will allow greater opportunities for meaningful engagement in policy development through the formal scrutiny process. The planning function. The creation of a single planning committee comprising 15 members, excluding the leader, the chairman of the council, the cabinet member with responsibility for planning, with up to 15 substitutes, where ward members on the committee may speak but not vote on applications within their ward, where ward members can continue to speak for up to 5 minutes each, with enhanced public involvement, for example, an increase in public speaking time, with increased mandatory training, with managed site visits, with minor changes to the scheme of delegation, for example, members being able to refer applications to the committee that are not in their ward, and with a special responsibility allowance of £50 for each session. This structure has been established for a number of reasons. First, in response to key themes identified by 3 separate independent and external reviews undertaken by the Planning Advisory Service in 2018, the Local Government Association in 2024, and the Planning Advisory Service in 2024. These reviews identified the following weaknesses in the Council's existing 2-committee system. 1. There are significant differences in the performance of the 2 committees and the conduct of the meetings. 2. There is inconsistency in decision-making between the 2 committees. 3. Some members exhibited a lack of knowledge in the planning process. And 4. Some councillors find it difficult to differentiate between their ward councillor and planning committee roles. They further remarked that the need to achieve consistency raises the option of having a single planning committee. Site visits need to be considered with caution, as they can be time-consuming and can exclude some members because of availability. The need for consistency suggests the need for better member training. There may be opportunities to merge the committees, and this could streamline processes and improve efficiency. The current arrangements would benefit from a review with the possibility of enabling a reduction in members to enable an enhanced level of training. And finally, it's very unusual for all councillors to sit on a planning committee. Further, Horsham District Council officers undertook a review which revealed that most councils have 1 planning committee. Of those councils with 1 planning committee, the smallest had 8 members, the largest had 19 members, with an average size of 12 members. The council that had 19 members on its committee currently have 15 members on its committee, and another council has reduced its committee size from 15 to 11 members. Most councils do not have mandatory site visits. Additionally, a survey conducted by the Planning Advisory Service between October and December 2024 involved 122 participants from councils throughout England, made a number of findings. And that includes that most councils had a single planning committee, most councils had between 9 and 12 members sitting on their planning committee, and most councils had mandatory training for planning committee members. The revised structure gives effect to the following recommendations of the 2018 Plenary Advisory Service review. Recommendation 1 was that the council should consider moving to a single planning committee. Recommendation 2, the council should consider reducing the number of members sitting on the planning committees. Recommendation 3, the council should enhance its training and make training compulsory. Recommendation 5, the council should consider introducing a process for the selection and management of site visits. The benefits of the revised structure include the effective ward representation, with ward members can speak more freely and engage more meaningfully in the pre-application process without the risk of challenge, as they would be precluded from voting. There would be a pool of substitutes. There will be an increased mandatory training. There will be a process of selecting site visits, bearing in mind this will not always be appropriate, and the requirement to adopt a more modern approach, for example, by using Google Maps and Street View. Additionally, officers are looking to introduce site videos, and there will be a sitting allowance for members. Finally, members will be aware that the Planning Infrastructure Bill received its second reading in the House of Commons last week and will next be proceeding to the committee stage. We know that this seeks to propose changes to the Town and Council Planning Act of 1990 to allow the Secretary of State to make regulations to 1, establish a national scheme of delegation, 2, mandatory training for planning committee members, and 3, control the size of planning committees. Government recognises that planning committees are not currently operating as effectively as possible, and that having smaller planning committees can lead to a more effective debate and decision-making. They make the point too that large and unwieldy committees will be banned. A question was raised at the Government's Committee as to why we are revising our structures now and not waiting for any central government mandates, and the answer to this is as follows. 1, why ignore the advice and put off improving our system when the timeline for any external mandates is unknown? We would be proactive and put in place systems that best serve our circumstances. 2, as a council, we take our own decisions based on the evidence before us and do not peg our decisions to that of third parties. 3, we need to deal with the here and now and be proactive in continually improving our operations. 4, bringing in any revised system will offer a period of adjustment, and we can monitor, test and provide further training as required. And lastly, bringing in any revised system will help mitigate against future change, disruption and uncertainty. I now propose that Council adopts the Constitution to be effective from the 23rd of April 2025, as contained in Appendix 8 to the report of Government's Committee, and subsequently amended with the exception of Councillors' Allowance Scheme, which will be subject of a separate report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Do you wish to speak now or later?
With your permission, I'll speak later, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I now open up to the floor. Councillor Circus.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I'm moving an amendment which has been circulated. I'm not going to read that amendment out because everyone can see it. And we all know, in essence, what that amendment seeks. But before I deal with the amendment in terms of its arguments, I would like to say that we should all say a big thank you to Lauren for the work that she's done. I sat on the employment committee that made the decision to employ Lauren, and looking back, I can see that it was one of the wisest decisions that we've made as an employment committee. And it pains me a little bit that I'm having to take the stance that I'm taking, but we believe as a group that there is something profoundly wrong about proceeding with the changes to the planning committee system at this stage. One of my favourite quotes, which I probably repeat far too often, is when Maynard Keynes famously said, "When the facts change, I change my mind." Now, the facts have changed. The facts have changed pretty massively. When we started the exercise of reviewing the Constitution, we did not know that our authority here was going to end in either 2027 or 2028. But we now know that this authority its time is limited. We didn't know that when we started. Secondly, we did not know about the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. And what we know from the letter from the Secretary of State, Angela Rayner's letter as Secretary of State, is that it's going to massively impact, according to her letter, the way in which planning committees operate. There's going to be a national scheme of delegation so that planning committees will only deal with the most significant schemes. A lot of issues will not be allowed in law, presumably, to be delegated to planning committees. We also know from her letter that the bill contains powers to set a maximum size for planning committees and for mandatory training of committee members. Now, in the light of that, it really makes no sense to continue. We should not have continued to move ahead with these changes. I'm not going to argue much about what I think is the weakness of what is being proposed. It's just that it's wrong here and now to proceed with it in the light of those two arguments. So I thought to myself, what arguments can possibly be made against ceasing to move ahead? Well, I noticed that, and we've asked for figures, our performance rate as a planning committee system is within government performance indicators. It was suggested, implied, that that wasn't the case, but it is the case. We've been told that, well, we're only winning cases by the skin of our teeth. Well, you could say that about an awful lot of cases won in courts and tribunals and on inquiries. The fact is they were won. We were also told that only a small change to our success rate would take us outside government performance indicators. But you know, I can't help feeling that record that we have is because we fight for the interests of residents. And I don't want to replace a system where we've fought hard for the interests of residents, and maybe it's taken us to the margin, with a system where we roll over in the face of developers. That is what the government wants us to do. And I'm sorry that the administration seems to want us to do that as well. Now, we're also told that the legislation will take too long. Oh, it's going to take years. No, it's not. We've spoken to our parliamentary contacts, and they tell us that the government intends to wrap this all up by July. Legislation can be moved through, particularly if it's central to what the government wants to achieve, very, very quickly. We're also told that other authorities do it differently. Well, so what? And does it really matter what peer reviews have said, when we're presumably never going to have another peer review of this authority? Does it matter? Does it matter if we do things differently, if we're within government performance indicators? I don't think so. Well, that we're then told we can simply change the system when we require changes. And almost certainly, when the law is changed, in a matter of months, we will have to change the system. All that messing about, the training, new systems that within months will be irrelevant and have to be changed again. What is the point of changing the system at this stage? There seems to be an unwillingness by governments at all levels to change things at the moment it becomes pointless to continue. We saw that with smart motorways. Long after it became clear that they were stupid motorways, which were downright dangerous and cost lives, nevertheless, we plodded on with these so-called smart motorways. Why have we ploughed on with these changes, given the arguments I've just presented as to why it makes sense to hold fire until we know how, at least until we know how the law is going to be changed? I just genuinely believe, Chairman, that just because it is in the work programme is a grossly insufficient reason to press ahead. We should recognise the reality that it makes no sense here and now to press ahead with these changes when we'll be back here within a matter of months discussing further and different changes. So that is the purpose of the amendment that I am proposing, and I commend it to members, and I hope members will see that it makes eminently good sense to support it, because this is not a political, we're not making a political point here. This is about good governance, and good governance says we should not press ahead with this at this time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. Do you have a seconder to your proposal?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak now or later?
I just want to say that Councillor Croker was happy to and was due to support Councillor Serkis tonight. He is currently in hospital at Worthing Hospital with a torn Achilles. I'm sure there's a joke in there about Achilles somewhere, but I'll leave it for that moment. Thank you. I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak now or later? Okay, thank you. Well, I'll now open the debate of the amendment only to the floor. Councillor Raby.
I wasn't going to speak on this evening, but I find some of those arguments from Councillor Serkis absolutely bizarre. The segue into smart motorways is a whole nother matter, but I think the crux of the matter is that this will provide a better service to residents. And we've got businesses and homeowners who want their easiest interaction. And often planning is one of the most challenging things that they deal with when dealing with the council. And the aim of this is to make that easier. And the fact that down the line, we may be mandated to do the sensible things that Councillor Walters has presented today is no reason to stay with the system we've got now, because it may change, but it'll be changing in the same direction. And my worry is that similarly to the failure to get a local plan in the entirety of the last administration, this is dither and delay. And even if we are finishing as a council, we should provide the best possible service to our residents here and now and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman. I am supporting Councillor Serkis's amendment, not because I am a Conservative, but not just because I'm a Conservative, because I regard this as affecting us all in this council chamber. So I'm arguing on behalf of Greens and Lib Dems here today. I don't want to go on about the planning and infrastructure bill because Councillor Circus has already made that. But I'm getting the feeling that this is the changes that are being proposed to planning committees are preempting the bill, which is due to come forward through Parliament very shortly. And I'd like to quote a well-known local MP who said at its second reading, this will not work for Horsham. Actually, he posed the question, will it work for Horsham? And he said, I think the answer is no. He also added that the best way to build more homes is to build more consent. And by that, I assume he's referring to consent amongst our residents. Our Chichester MP also added that housing developers have a duty to create communities and not just buildings, and added councillors who are elected to represent their areas are fighting with their hands behind their backs. I don't need to remind you all that both of these are Lib Dem MPs. But this backs up my point to object to the suggestion of decreasing the size of our planning committees. We are all elected by our residents to do just one thing, and that is to represent them in whatever way we can. How are you going as a member to answer a phone call or a letter from a resident and reply, I'm sorry, I can't represent your view on planning anymore, but I will ask one of the other members who is not in our ward but who does sit on the committee? That's just not good enough representing our residents. We are here, as the MP for Chichester said, to build our communities and be proud of the communities we represent. All political sides in this chamber clearly don't want to see top-down planning legislation imposed on us, where the Climate and Nature Bill, which has been hard fought for over the past year or so, is totally ignored, and where all the hard work done by our own parishes to fight climate change is also about to be ignored. I'd also add that our own Wilder Horsham district will be sidelined by these new planning laws in this unprecedented scramble to build houses unsustainably and continuously. This administration is now unwittingly supporting this by taking the role of democracy out of our planning process. We all need to be involved in planning committees, and I therefore support this amendment and ask all members here to vote with an eye on the future of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I take Councillor Knoll's point about that we're not wearing party hats here. I think it's very important. The point is this, that none of us, I think, in this room agree with everything that's being flagged for the planning bill that this government is seeking to introduce. There are key elements that our MPs are already saying are not in the bill. That I take what Councillor Circus has said about bills can be pushed through very fast. Of course they can. However, and in my experience, having worked in local government for a very long time, the things that are not pushed through fast are the statutory regulations to enact certain key parts of the bill. And those quite often take much longer to come about. So I don't think the assumption
that this will happen quickly is necessarily a correct one, particularly in relation to the details of how we go about our business in relation to planning. The reason the peer review is relevant is because evidence of good practice elsewhere in councils of all party political control is relevant to us in making good judgments about what we do to represent our residents. And so it isn't something one just sets aside. It is a piece of data. It is a piece of evidence to be considered. And I don't actually understand how what is being proposed in the new constitution suggests that the administration is seeking to roll over to the developers. I'm sure Councillor Circus, Councillor Noel and others will have heard many of us on planning committees being as strong as they are in relation to key planning proposals, and that will continue into the future. Any member of this council who wishes to speak up strongly on behalf of their residents will still be able to do so. And in fact, certainly, I know personally I may not seek to be on the planning committee, but I have every intention of doing that. The key thing is that those members will be able to say to their residents, actually, I agree with you. And because I agree with you, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make the strongest case possible to stop this happening. And you can't do that and we can't do that at the moment. So in that sense, it is freeing up our voices rather than controlling our voices. Mandatory training, many of you know I come from an education background, so therefore you'd expect me to say that is absolutely a no-brainer. Those people who are making key decisions in the planning committees need to be making them on the basis of knowledge, on the basis of understanding of the law, on the basis of understanding of key case histories that have happened elsewhere. And that is something that it's good for us to get stuck into early. Okay, yes, the details may need to be slightly amended as we see those statutory regulations that I'm referring to, but that doesn't stop us learning a whole load of important things about the planning process. But the bottom line is this. Currently, we have two large groups of people from all sorts of background, but split across the parts of the district that we represent. And they meet separately. We are one planning authority, and we have to present decisions which are consistent. The issue here that we need to mitigate is the risk of inconsistency, and I take Councillor Circus's point that the evidence is that we've managed to walk the right side of that risk mostly. But that doesn't mean we always will for the future. And so, for me, this change in the Constitution is simply good common sense, and I recommend it to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Taylor. So I've been misinformed. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. I've been pleased to hear views expressed on this at various different stages through the Constitutional Working Group and the Governance Committee meeting on the 24th of March and here again in this chamber. And so I would like to echo the comments that Councillor Circus began with, thanking the officers for the phenomenal work that they've done in preparing this remarkable 249-page document that we're reviewing. I'm going to confine my comments to the proposed amendment, though, which Councillor Circus introduced with the preface of a quotation, "When the facts change, I change my mind." Well, since we're doing quotations tonight, apparently, it's interesting to hear his opinion expressed this evening, which runs somewhat contrary to opinions expressed in the West Sussex County Times, and then again at the Governance Committee meeting on the 24th of March, at 1 hour, 13 minutes and 30 seconds for those of you who are inclined to watch the council's YouTube channel recording of it. Just to clarify, because some people have said that I've always supported professional planning committees, I did, as long as it's done properly. So one of the things that is crucially important in planning and that exposes this council to risk and has been highlighted as a point by a number of other councillors this evening is the inconsistencies in decision making that we face. And it's unfortunate, therefore, that we don't see a consistency of argument from one group as to their reasons for opposing the Constitution's planning proposals. They don't even seem to have a clear agreement whether or not it's running contrary to democracy, whether or not it's actually fine in principle, but it's a matter of poor timing. Well, in response to that, I'd like to thank Councillor Knoll for quite clearly demonstrating here, I think, the point raised by the peer review group, that certain councillors seem to have some difficulty differentiating their roles as ward members and their specific roles as they undertake under a planning committee. I think that Councillor Mercer has, at greater detail than I could helpfully add to, pointed out the ways in which councillors will still be able to strongly advocate for their residents' views as part of a reformed and improved planning committee without being at risk of predetermination. And I look very much forward to Councillor Knoll being able to speak for his residents and speak his mind freely without risking a decision becoming potentially liable to appeal because he had already made his mind up about his strong views. There is some consistency, I think, of decision making in the objections that Councillor Serkis seems to bring forward. It is a case of wanting to put off making any changes if at all possible. The dilapidated state of the seating in the capital, I think, offers an interesting visual analogy for this. The result of years of inattention and neglect. We have had now many, many years of professional bodies and external bodies pointing out to us in Horsham the way in which we are out of step with good policy, with best practice. Why risk waiting any longer to be held up as an example of bad practice when we have such clear indications of good practice and such clear indications of the way in which that will be enforced upon those who do not meet that standard coming in legislation? What is the point of changing the system, Councillor Serkis asked. I might reply by quoting John Maynard Keynes, when the facts change, I change my mind. Or in this case, change what I do because of what is required of me and what is expected of me and what is good and prudent practice. If we wait for certainty in governance, if we wait for an unchanging and static situation, we shall wait forever because outside of the certainties of death and tactics, there are no static states in making decisions. We live in a changing world, subject to the three concatenating crises of a housing crisis, a climate crisis, and a cost of living crisis. It is inevitable that we will see further changes required of us in the future, just as we have seen changes required of us in the last several years, thanks to unexpected events such as water neutrality. But that is no reason not to take action while we can, when we have clear and good reasons to do so, and surely we have clear and good reasons to do so. So rather than having a policy of changing what we say when the company changes that we're in, perhaps we should adhere to the spirit of what Councillor Serkis quoted. The facts are changing. The facts have already changed. Shall we not change with them?
Can you wrap up now, Councillor Brooks, please? You've had at least.
I believe I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak this evening, but some of the comments I've heard has encouraged me to do so. Good governance. Good governance is ensuring that you're operating the most efficient and effective way. I think over the number of years, the Planning Committee has been reviewed, and there has been third-party review of the Planning Committee, and it's been clearly identified that it needs to change. The first review was back in 2018, and here we are some 7 years later discussing whether we should change. We shouldn't wait for the government to impose this on us. We should make the change now. We can then pilot that change until such time as the government impose the size of the committee, which I don't think will be a definitive number. It will be between two numbers, might be between 10 and 15, as they've done with licensing. A lot of the comments have been made well by the Cabinet member, Councillor Waters, and I think I am minded to approve the new constitution. I know we're talking about the amendment here. I'm not minded to support the amendments. I think one of the things we've seen, and when you look at and understand group dynamics, we will see something called group think. Happens in big committees. And I'm not suggesting for one moment reduce the size of the council, but this is when you get group think, when groups are more interested in maintaining unanimity than realistically appraising the various courses of action that are open to us. And I think that is the weakness with having large committees. The planning committee is too big. I think by having a single committee, it actually addresses the issue that I often hear, is that there's a divide. There's planning north and planning south. And we need a holistic view of planning across our whole district. You know, people in the south will say, oh, we're going to get all the houses now because the planning committee is biased or balanced towards a different group. And I think that holistic view is a much better presented through a single committee. One final thing is about members' involvement. I think it's beneficial for the members to have a smaller committee. And I mentioned last week that my own experience, instead of saying now I have to be careful how I discuss things with my residents, ward residents, other than the fear of predetermination, I can work with them. And I have done that on a couple of occasions and it's meant I've stepped away from the committee. So I can work with them. And as a ward member, I think going forward, we can work more in the pipeline of the applications at pre-app. So we work with the developers and what's being put forward, and some members are already doing that, and we're seeing changes to their original plans. And I think we can also be involved in post-application. It is something outside of what's being discussed, but I think we can force, or not force, it'd be nice to be able to force something, but we can work on the quality of the development. Some of these houses we're not going to be able to, because of various positions and the government's positions, we may not be able to realistically challenge the planning application, but we can make sure that it is a quality development that we are approving. So I'm not minded to vote in favour of this particular motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis-Brown. Councillor Boffey.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's see whether I'm slightly less annoyed than I was a little bit earlier, if I've calmed down at all. I'll start out by saying there's been a couple of people have thanked off. You know, Lauren's been thanked. Lauren's done a fantastic job on this, and officers have been thanked. But I'd also like to say thank you very much to Bradley. I'm probably going to embarrass him by saying this here, but he's been there all the way through working on this with Lauren. So thank you very much. It's interesting that Councillor Circus chose to quote one of the most famous liberals there's ever been, actually. It's slightly surprising, but I would also say, as an economist, he was an interventionist. He was not into laissez-faire. He was into taking action when things need to be done, and that's what I hope we would do as a council. I'll take issue slightly on the point, one of the points that Councillor Circus made. The administration want us to roll over in the face of the developers. Well, I'm going to misuse a term here. I'm sure my learned friend, who knows so much about governance, is aware that this is not a change that's being put forward by the administration. This comes from the governance committee. This is not an administration agenda here. Councillor Noel, am I slightly less annoyed than I was earlier? Maybe I'll be a little bit kinder than I was going to be. But you have demonstrated quite well what is wrong and what needs to be fixed. You know, how can you be sitting on a planning committee thinking that what you're doing there is not sitting there and acting and making decisions in the interests of the district as a whole, but purely in the interests of your ward residents? That is the antithesis of what it's supposed to be. And when I pick up the phone, when someone's ringing me, or frankly, as happened recently, when they came round and knocked on my door, what did I say to them? Well, fortunately, because I'm not on the planning committee anymore, I can actually go to this planning committee and speak my mind like I did last night. That's what you say to people. You say, I don't have to worry about, being able to think about this properly and make the arguments I want to. I can actually stand up for you as my residents and say what I really think. Or, as Councillor Ellis Brown has said, possibly work with someone who's putting a scheme together that isn't well supported within the ward by the residents, and maybe they can work with them to try and make it better to such a point that actually it's not as objectionable anymore. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you were worried about whether you were going to be able to speak on it in a planning committee meeting. Why act now? What is the point of making change now? What the point of making change is to make things better. And if you know you can do something to make it better, it's just wrong to wait around and wait and see. And, we've seen too many examples before in this council of what happens when you wait and see. And some of them are the reasons why I'm into politics now. Drill hall, left to rot until all that supposedly could be done is knock it down. Capital, going that way as well if we don't take some action on it. Local plan, pushing that one through back in the beginning of 2023. Oh, it was just too hard. Or we need to wait for this change, or wait for that change. Sorry, if it had gone through, it'd be made by now. That's what happens when you wait rather than taking action. And if we get talking about administrations, then yes, our administration has come in and it has taken action to make things better. And I hate to see us as a council not do the same. And just one other little thought, which is way out of practice, but wait until they tell us to do it. Wait until they make us. Just let us hang on a little bit longer. I'm sure it'll be fine. Just wait a bit longer. Well, who wants to be held up nationwide as an example of bad practice? Because that's what you're arguing for. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Buffy. Councillor Bateman.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you to Councillor Circus and those who have spoken tonight. I didn't come here with a decision made. I wanted to come here with an open mind and listen to what everybody had to say. It's kind of reassured me that my gut was correct. And it's that when we arrive at planning committees, we have to arrive there willing to make hard decisions, ones that necessarily won't be in the interest and wishes of the people who live in our communities, because we have to think strategically at that level. We've got to arrive not predetermined. And so if I arrive there with a decision already made, I'm actually not doing my job. So, probably echoing what Councillor Boffey has had to say, if we continue to run planning committees, only looking out for our own ward and only looking out for what's in the best interest of my own backyard, we're actually not doing our job. And I don't want to just do what's best for my ward. I want to think strategically and think about my community as a whole. Because if we don't make the choices on housing that our communities need. We don't support our traveller communities either. We don't create local plans. By doing nothing, we actually do everybody in our entire community a disservice. So I have listened tonight. I wanted to listen. I wanted to hear what you had to say, but I am minded not to vote for any of the amendments and to support what's on offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Don't believe we have any further anybody that wishes to speak. Councillor, do you wish to speak now as second of the motion?
Just to say, I think a lot's been said already. I think we are possibly jumping the gun, and I don't believe that the data, our stats, currently supports the need for change at the moment. Thank you.
I now extend the right to reply to Councillor Walters as the mover of the original motion to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the concerns raised by the Tory opposition regarding the proposed changes to our planning committee system. However, I firmly believe that these changes are necessary for the continued improvement and modernisation of the planning process. The current system, while functional, has become outdated and in need of reform to better reflect the needs of our community and ensure greater efficiency in decision making. The proposed changes will help streamline processes, increase transparency and provide more opportunities for diverse voices to be heard, giving councillors the opportunity to discuss applications with local people and stakeholders without fear of being told of doing so makes us biased, and the consequence of not being able to speak at committee due to this perceived bias. I have my own experience of the other side of this back in 2007, when I tried to work hard to stop the changes to the town hall, old bills as it is now. I called each of what I regarded as the councillors on the committee at the time, and each one of them said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I can't give you an opinion. I can't support anything that you're saying to me. I can't even spend the time with you. Goodbye." I can't tell you how frustrating that was to be on the other side of this. I feel that we're committed to creating a system that is more responsive to the evolving needs of the local residents and stakeholders, and these reforms are a step in that direction. By resisting these changes, the Tory opposition have failed to grasp the criticisms put our way by the peer group challenge, which included Tory councillors. They risk maintaining a system that no longer serves the best interests of our community, a system not used by any previously run Tory councils around us. In fact, it seems to me my colleagues are saying that these previously Tory-led councils were wrong in having a one-committee system, that a single committee made up of planning experts is somehow a party political concept. The Labour government recognises the need for reform, hence the proposals in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, a bill I'm sure previous Tory housing ministers would have loved to put in place to meet their housing plans. But 16 Tory housing ministers in 13 years all failed to bring about reform. Now it's here, we need to act now so we can grab the benefits of change. I believe that thoughtful reforms will improve the overall planning process, making it more inclusive and adaptable to future challenges. Therefore, while I respect the views of the opposition and other colleagues with the same view, I remain committed to pushing forward with the necessary changes to the planning committee system to ensure better governance and more effective decision making for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. I now ask the council to vote on the amendment.
A point of order, Chairman. Point of order. Can I call for a recorded vote, please?
Do you have a seconder to that?
Yeah, somewhere behind them.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to a recorded vote. If you can just bear with us whilst Aisha sorts out the technology. I suspect this is probably the first one we've had in the chamber, so please bear with us.
Councillor Sam Bateman.
Can you clarify exactly what it is I am voting on at the moment?
Sorry, you are voting on the amendment, not on the principle. So you're voting on Councillor Serkis's amendment.
Voting against.
Councillor Mark Bainham.
Against.
Councillor Emma Beard. Councillor Tony Bevis. Councillor Colette Blackburn.
Against.
Councillor Martin Buffy.
Utterly against.
Councillor Peter Vanderborg.
Against.
Councillor James Brooks.
Against.
Councillor John Campbell.
For.
Councillor Philip Serkis.
For.
Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ellis-Brown.
Against.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
Against.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan.
For.
Councillor Claudia Fisher.
For.
Councillor Chris Frank.
Against.
Councillor Joan Grech.
Against.
Councillor Warwick Hellawell.
Against.
Councillor Kasha Greenwood.
Against.
Councillor Alex Jeffrey.
Against.
Councillor Joanne Knowles.
Against.
Councillor Lynn Lambert.
Abstain.
Councillor Richard Landernew.
For.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
For.
Councillor Alan Manton.
Utterly for.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
Against.
Councillor Colin Minto.
Against.
Councillor Roger Knoll.
For.
Councillor John Olsen.
Against.
Councillor Jill Perry.
Against.
Councillor Josh Potts.
For.
Councillor Sam Raby.
Against.
Councillor David Skip.
Against.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
Against.
Councillor John Trollope.
Against.
Councillor Clive Trott.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Walters.
Against.
That's 11 for, 25 against and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. The motion has lost. We will now return to the debate on the original motion. The motion is open to the floor to debate. Councillor Campbell.
I'd also like to propose an amendment, which has been published. Is it okay if I go through that now?
Yes, please do, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. So my amendment is a hybrid of the current arrangement and what's been proposed in the Constitution. I'm just going to cover it quickly. I haven't prepared any quotes from any famous economists, so apologies for that. Under my version of the planning committee going forward, North and South committees would be retained, but reduced in number to 10 members each, with a further 5 members each of members who can substitute in the event of absence. The makeup of the committees would be agreed by group member, the leaders of the various groups, rather like it's been suggested with the in the new constitution. Ward members would be allowed to speak on applications relating to their ward, but wouldn't be able to vote. That, as we've heard in the debate on the previous amendment, this would allow members to speak freely without the fear of predetermination. And lastly, since there would be North and South committees, there would be no more meetings to attend than we currently do as larger committees, and therefore I would see that the sitting allowance of £50 per member would be redundant and not needed. And in a nutshell, that is the proposal. The way I see it is this achieves the outcome of the peer review and the upcoming legislation by having smaller committees. It would, as I said earlier, give the opportunity for members to be forthright in their opinions on local planning issues, and it would save some money going forward as well, which is never a bad thing. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Do you have a seconder?
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher, do you wish to speak now or later?
Is it a choice? Will I speak now and later, or now only?
Now or later.
Okay, so I'll speak now. So I think one of the things that is lost, I appreciate all of the arguments about a smaller committee and a one committee and so on. The thing that is lost is the expertise of the issues, the particular issues that relate to the north and the south of this district. And I also think, and strongly commend the saving of £18,000 a year, which there's no need now with this proposal from Councillor Campbell for having to pay. You'd still have trained committee members for each planning group. You'd still have a local knowledge. You wouldn't have to have payment. You'd have the same amount of meetings that you would that we do currently, and so it wouldn't be a big ask. And you could have a smaller group of people who could cover if there was someone not able to attend. So I strongly recommend that we take a middle way, and hope that people will support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. I will now open this to the floor to debate. Can we please try to avoid a repetition of the debate we had in the previous amendment? So if we could limit the comments to the specifics of Councillor Campbell's proposals. Thank you. Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just slightly confused by this amendment in particular because the proposer, Councillor Campbell, just voted in favour of the previous amendment. So unless Councillor Campbell is simply hedging his bets, I'd be led to assume this is possibly opposition for opposition's sake. And I believe the arguments put forward by those already in support of the Constitution and planning proposals as unamended should still stand. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell, you will get a chance to reply later, but I can see you urgently wish to reply, but please hold on for now. Councillor Strollop.
Trollope. My name has been mispronounced many times, but never Swallop, so I congratulate you for that. My thinking, and I'm trying to come up with a point that's not been discussed before, but one that comes out quite strongly at me is that my experience on planning south has been that the meetings, I think, have taken a lot longer than they need to have been. I think some of it is because of perhaps a lack of training, or we are challenging points where if we actually knew planning law better, we would not be making those points. So I would think that there might be a bit of a transition period, but having one planning authority, one planning group better trained members, I think the meetings will actually become a lot more quick. And I did read somewhere in the briefing notes that the meetings probably would end up being only once a month, as they roughly are at the moment anyway. So I think, I don't necessarily agree that having two committees somehow would ease the burden on the person attending the committee. I think over time, it will probably ease off and not be intolerable. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bainham. For a change.
Yes, thank you. I too sit on Planning South and have done since I joined the council, and I think I've only missed one or possibly two of all those planning meetings. And when I go into the meeting, I think, what's the show going to be like tonight? Because it's always a show of some kind. And Councillor Fisher just raised the prospect of, it would save money. £18,000 would be saved. But how many times have we come close in Planning South and probably in Planning North, I don't know, to reaching an indefensible decision? One that we would genuinely lose on appeal. Every appeal we lose is 3 times that £18,000 or more. And we've come very close on a lot of occasions, even down to the casting vote of the chairman on occasion too. And as the finance guy in the room, I can't not ignore those considerations. And I really think having a more expert, it's not professional is probably the wrong word, but more expert one, people who actually are au fait with the national planning framework, and people who can know the difference between some simple things as an outline application and a full application, because these things get mixed up all the time. And then finally, there's the consistency. Councillor Campbell, I welcome you trying to sort of bring the sides together here and kind of compromise, but I think the consistency point is really the one that says it all for me. So I'm afraid I cannot support your amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Raby.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that in terms of the knowledge, and I appreciate that there are pockets of knowledge and information about the district, but on this one single planning committee, there'll be members from all over the district, and they will be able to raise matters that are specific to Roffey or to Storrington, and so that those bits of specific knowledge can be brought to the committee, but the standardisation will be on how planning is delivered, and understanding will become, so you won't have the disparity. So if there really are these two different cultures of knowledge, that's even a bigger risk that we'll separate, but the larger committee will still take in the views of members of the north and from the middle of the district and the bottom of the district. I'd also just like to briefly say, we're not a very big district, so I think we can all cope with the whole of it. I've been living here since I was born, and I've got in-laws that live in Stenning and Storrington. I know the district pretty well. I'm actually slightly more worried by the future, because if we end up with a West Sussex unitary, imagine trying to understand the conditions. I know nothing about Chichester. If there was a park that was potentially encroached on in Burgess Hill, I would know nothing about it. I do know most of Horsham district, and I think probably most of the members here have got a good understanding of our district. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if you think a single committee for the whole of Horsham is big, just wait for a couple of years' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Councillor Campbell for presenting what I think is, a good faith and attempt at compromise, a middle way that Councillor Fisher mentioned is no bad thing. I was sad that Councillor Campbell wasn't able to attend the Governance Committee meeting on the 24th of March and be able to offer his insights at that point, rather than, you know, us hearing a suggestion for the first time as an amendment of full council. And I likewise am sad that we don't get to hear this evening from Councillors Claire Vickers and Paul Clark of the Tory group, who were unable to attend but were able to raise their opinions at that governance committee. It's laudable to want to bring people together. I think, as Councillor Raby has quite eloquently put forward, having a single planning committee offers that. A two-tier system where there is an artificial distinction between different parts of our district, which, though they have their differences, Horsham Town being in the north, a section of the South Downs National Park being in the south, are present, but as we encountered at Planning Committee North last night, Coolham and Cox Green and very small rural settings are available in the north, just so serious urban and industrial considerations find their way to Planning Committee South in Billingshurst. Our diverse district requires diverse opinions, whoever and whichever way we divide it up. The more we divide it, the less likely we are to have consistency of decision making. One council, one planning committee, please.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Campbell, I wish to apologise. You're not permitted to actually speak again. So apologies for that. I will now move to Councillor Waters to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Campbell and Councillor Fisher for putting forward a vision of compromise. I acknowledge the concerns raised and thank them for agreeing the current planning committee system needs changing. However, after careful consideration, I do not support the proposed changes. The structure of one committee has been carefully developed to ensure transparency, efficiency and accountability in decision making. It allows for diverse input from residents and members with different expertise and backgrounds, heard by a committee that has oversight of applications across the district, ensuring that planning decisions are well-rounded and inclusive of various community needs. The proposed alterations, while well-intentioned, risk undermining the integrity of the process by concentrating decision-making power into two smaller groups, one in the south, one in the north, thereby effectively maintaining the status quo. Listening to the comments made by my colleagues, there are significant inconsistencies between the two existing committees. The suggested two-committee system could potentially continue the matter of the north-south divide, slow down the planning process and continue the challenges faced by parish councils, county council, this council and developers. The one planning committee system would allow us to effectively engage with residents, stakeholders and other partners in the development process, and I believe it's in the best interest of our community. Therefore, I'm against the proposed changes and remain committed to the value of fairness, transparency and collaborative decision-making the one planning committee system will bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I now ask the council to vote on Councillor Campbell's amendment. Sorry, Councillor Campbell, I did actually incorrectly state to you would have a right to
I was going to ask for a recorded vote.
Ah, fine. Thank you. Do you have a seconder? And a third? Right. If you just bear with us as we get the mechanism working. Thank you.
Councillor Sam Bateman.
Voting against the amendment.
Councillor Mark Bainham.
Against.
Councillor Emma Beard. Councillor Tony Bevis.
Against.
Councillor Colette Blackburn. Councillor Philip Circus.
For.
Councillor Joy Dennis. Councillor Len Ellis-Brown.
Against.
Councillor Nigel Emery.
Against.
Councillor Victoria Finnegan.
For.
Councillor Claudia Fisher.
For.
Councillor Chris Frank.
Against.
Councillor Joan Greck.
Abstain.
Councillor Kasia Greenwood.
Against.
Councillor Warwick Hellawell.
Against.
Councillor Alex Jeffrey.
Against.
Councillor Joanne Knowles.
Against.
Councillor Lynn Lambert.
Abstain.
Councillor Richard Landew.
For.
Councillor Dennis Livingstone.
Against.
Councillor Alan Manton.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Marks.
For.
Councillor Jay Mercer.
Against.
Councillor Colin Minto.
Against.
Councillor Roger Knoll.
For.
Councillor John Olsen.
Against.
Councillor Jill Perry.
For.
Councillor Josh Potts.
For.
Councillor Sam Raby.
Against.
Councillor David Skip.
Against.
Councillor Cheryl Sweeney.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Taylor.
Against.
Councillor John Trollope.
Against.
Councillor Clive Trott.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Waters.
Against.
Twelve for, 24 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. The motion is lost. We will now return to debate the original unamended motion. Some while ago that was open to the floor. So I don't know whether anybody on the floor wishes to make any comments in respect to the original motion of the full unamended constitution. Councillor Boffey.
Thank you, Chairman. We all knew that there was going to be a debate around one particular element of this, but I wouldn't like us all to lose sight of all the good things that are in here as well. It is an incredibly comprehensive document, and I took great pleasure actually in reading every single line, word and everything of it to go through it as a piece, and I got to the end of it, and I have to say, you know, it's a hell of a piece of work, so well done, guys. And just, I'm not going to drag this out or anything, but I would just like to say I'm actually genuinely really excited to see what the new policy and scrutiny committees can do for the council. I think there are great opportunities for us to involve all members in policy development going forward. Okay, well, it may well be in the time left to us, but you know, there's a lot we can do in the time that's left to us, and I want to see all parties contributing towards that in policy development and have things taken to policy development earlier. And I think, you know, everyone's got something to offer, and if we can help involve everyone and actually do that, we can do some really great constructive things together. So I'm really excited about that element of the Constitution, and I just want to commend it all to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Looking around the room, there doesn't appear to be anybody else that wishes to make a comment. I now invite Councillor Brooke as the seconder of the motion to speak, but please don't make it too long.
Well, thank you, Chair. Councillor Brookers is much more succinct than I am, and he's a great fan of democracy, as many in this chamber are. So he's very anxious that we do a bit more of it tonight and move along to a vote. I think we've debated this thoroughly and we look forward, I think, to adopting it in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waters, do you wish to make any closing comments?
No, I don't actually. Although I would like to thank Lauren and Bradley for all the work that they've done and the many, many weekends that they've put into this. They well deserve a bottle of champagne each, I think, if we can afford it.
Thank you very much. I will now put this to the vote. All these in favour of approving the recommendations on page 33 of the agenda, please show. Okay, and those against? Please show if you wish to vote against.
Abstentions.
Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you all very much indeed. We now move to agenda item 8, the revised calendar of meetings, and I invite the Chief Executive to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. The calendar of meetings for 2025-26 was approved at the February meeting of the Council. A revised calendar is included in the agenda pack to account for changes to the Constitution. There has also been a change to the Unparished Area Committee, Policy and Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet meeting dates in October and November to allow sufficient time for the production and the monitoring and performance updates to be considered by the relevant Policy and Scrutiny Committee. Members are recommended to approve the calendar of meetings and delegate authority to the monitoring officer to make amendments where required in the Constitution with the Chair or, in their absence, the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
I think she needs a proposer, actually,
Sorry.
Chairman, and that's me.
Sorry, thank you. Martin, please. Do you have a seconder?
I believe so.
I believe it's Councillor Beavers. Tony, it's you. I'm assuming nobody wishes to speak on this item. So therefore, let's go straight to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 285 of the agenda, please show. The motion is passed unanimously. We now move on to IRP Report 9. And again, I hand over to the Chief Executive to introduce this item before handing over to Alan Ladley, the Chair of the panel.
Thank you, Chairman. As members will be aware, the Independent Remuneration Panel recently completed a full review of members' allowances, which was approved by the Council in February. The Independent Remuneration Panel have been instructed to complete a further review as a result of the potential changes to the Constitution. The report of the Independent Remuneration Panel is included within the agenda pack, and the Chair of the panel will present this report.
Alan, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me again here tonight. We were asked to look at the 3 proposed changes for the committees in the Constitution. Our research was based on, I guess, a guesstimate of what the new committees would look like, based on a briefing we were given. Have we got it right? Possibly not. But our research was based on the facts we were given researched other authorities nationally or regionally and within West Sussex, and we looked at national guidance where it existed. So I believe we've done a best guess based on the information to date. Have to accept that once the new committees bed in, there will undoubtedly be changes, which is why we are proposing as well that we should undertake an interim review before the next municipal year, so that any changes to your scheme of allowances can be built in. The only other thing I would say is these are our recommendations. That's both with regard to the chairs, vice chairs, and in the case of the new planning committee, a suggestion of paying an attendance allowance, an SRA, to members. It is the matter for you, of course. It is your scheme of allowances. You can accept or reject any of our recommendations. Happy to answer questions, Chair, if there are any.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have a proposal for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Roffey. Do you speak now or later?
Well, I probably need to speak now, but I'll just say I support the proposals. One of the things I've learnt and taken on board wholeheartedly from Councillor Circus is that one should always listen to the recommendations of the IRP and go with it, and I see no need to change now. And I'll thank Mr Ladley and the panel for their work.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Circus, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'd just say that for the first time tonight, I can agree with every word that the Leader of the Council just said. It doesn't happen very often.
Thank you so much, Councillor Circus. I now open this to the floor to debate. Does anybody wish to contribute to debate? Right. In which case, let's move straight to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 293 of the agenda, please show. Okay. Those against? Any abstentions? Okay. The motion is carried. Moving now to item 10, Council Resources. Again, I will hand over to the Chief Executive to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Much has been said in the chamber tonight about what happens when things change. Things have changed since we set the budget, or at least did the work behind it to set the staffing budget, which as head of paid service, I now feel doesn't cover all the work that needs to be done. In particular, the things that have changed since we did the majority of the work in the late autumn. Horsham Blueprint requested a community governance review of the unparished part of the area. The government in December published the English Devolution White Paper. As a result of that, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee had a discussion about the council's perhaps never quite managing to deliver the capital programme. But the importance it was that we did deliver the capital programme, that we couldn't allow slippage if the council weren't to continue. And we had the report from the Local Government Association on communications because councillors felt our communications weren't quite up to the mark. We had some peers in, they talked to us and they suggested that we needed a communications manager. And finally, our local plan got paused and a number of the developers have suggested that they will be putting in applications that would have followed the local plan anyway. So we're expecting more work. So we've had changes in the environment, in the law, in work requests, and I no longer feel that I can deliver all of this in the timescales you want it delivered with the current employees. So I've chunked this up into three sections. So the first is about the capital programme. The capital programme gets stuck, as overview and scrutiny will know, in property, in legal, and sometimes in planning. In order to move at pace, my colleagues have suggested to me we need a new senior mechanical and electrical engineer, and we think the civil engineer post that we were going to bring in as an apprentice, we actually, in order to deliver the work more quickly, rather than train that person up over a period of time, needs to be a little more senior. We need an extra property lawyer in order to progress some of the property work we're doing, and an extra planner with a focus on Horsham districts projects to move them forward more quickly. We also think we need a couple of days a week of an extra project manager to enable us to finish off the Bishopric project while moving at pace on some of the others. So that's one group, and the major group of extra staff that I feel I need for the next 2 or 3 years. In communications, we had the review by the Local Government Association. They made 21 recommendations to improve the way we do outward-facing communications. Dare I say it, they actually suggested that our council was boring. I don't find it boring at all. However, their recommendation is that we need a communications manager. Add to that the complexity that is coming around, the complexity of messages that we're going to have around the end of two-tier local government in our area. I feel I need a communications manager. I wish to follow the recommendations they've made and have that manager report to me. And then there is the anticipated increase in planning applications that have been suggested to us by the developers. We don't know exactly what they are or exactly when they will come in, but I am going to ask you for money for 2 extra posts, which the head of Planning and Development Management and Building Control will bring in as she sees the workload begin to build. So if the workload doesn't build, she won't fill them. But if it does, she will. So the total cost of these extra posts would be £369,000 in 25-26, £475,000, nearly 476 over a full year. The planning posts will be funded from extra income. So it would only be the posts that are not planning posts that we would need to fund, and that would come from reserve. So I am asking for extra money. My colleague, the Chief Finance Officer, has pointed out, of course, that if we spend money from reserve, we will lose interest. But I put it to you, if you want to do these things and at pace, if we want to keep on top of our planning applications, if we want to improve our communications as advised to us by external people, I believe I need extra council resourcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Do you have a proposal for this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'll do it now.
Thank you.
We have an excellent, highly experienced and very knowledgeable Chief Executive who I'm very proud to work alongside. And when she says that this is what we need to get the job done, this is what we need to get the job done, and I support her in it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor. Do you wish to speak now or later?
Speak briefly now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo what Councillor Boffey's already said, and particularly his remarks regarding the Chief Executive. But I would be so bold as to make one slight correction to the Chief Executive. When the peer review group came, and as she said, described Horsham as boring, the actual context was having read the website, we came to the conclusion that Horsham must be boring. So that's the sort of the communication side of it. But clearly these posts are necessary. I know that in the past there has been a comms manager, but it was quite interesting to note just recently that given everything that's happening with devolution and local government reorganisation, our sister councils have pulled together a group of comms managers to manage the sort of the wider picture. And we were a little bit embarrassed because we were the only one who didn't have one. Yes, so I recommend the proposals.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now open this to the debate, to the floor to debate. Councillor Circus.
Having something of a cynical disposition, that's the trouble with having been in this game as many years as I have. I'm wondering whether the Chief Executive could tell us whether any element of this extra resources needed in planning is related, if not directly, then indirectly, to the decision we made a little while ago to completely change our planning committee system, and all that implies about changes in organisation, administration, training and so forth. I wonder whether the Chief Executive could tell us whether there is any link, even indirectly, because it's what I would have expected, and it's one of the reasons why we on this side thought that making the change was a bad idea. So if I can make that, or ask that question, please, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Circus. Chief Executive, would you like to reply to those comments?
Yes, not at all, Councillor Circus. These posts, and there are two sets of planning posts here, or one post to move forward our projects, because our projects get stuck in planning, particularly when they involve things like the London Road car park, the Duke Square car park. The planners have a lot of work on, they have to take everything in order. We just don't quite get through to our own projects at the speed we want. And then the others really are about the big developers coming to us saying, we put something forward in the local plan, you either put it in or you didn't, but at the moment you haven't got a local plan, you haven't heard back from the inspector yet. We keep hoping it will come in any day, but we haven't heard back yet. And therefore, as you know, failing the housing delivery test, don't have a 5-year land supply, people can put in for planning applications. We're expecting some of the big ones in. Unfortunately, because she's poorly, the Director of Place isn't here tonight, but she has spoken to several of them, and they approached her very, very quickly after the postponement of the examination. And I'm happy to speak to you in more detail tomorrow when we meet.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Raby. Sorry, Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Chair. In section 1.5, it says, anticipate increase in planning applications, and that people will only be recruited if they are needed. Will we be looking beyond the aspects of planning applications, such as increasing their resource later, may give consideration to increasing the head count later for areas which we're dealing with biodiversity net gain, looking at seal, etc., because all of that will increase as more and more applications come through, and how we manage that going forward. Will that be something that will be considered at a later stage if we need these additional headcount?
These proposals were put forward to me by the head of development and building development management and building control the answer is I'm not expert enough to answer that one, but I can get her to do you
Apologies.
a
maybe didn't-
detailed answer on what she expects. I think what she was expecting was big, major planning applications coming in for which she would first of all need a principal planner, and as the workload built, she might need a senior as well. The knock on into the other areas, until it happens, it's hard to tell. Colleagues may know I'm not expert enough, not being a planner, to answer that one.
Apologies, I didn't probably ask the question in the right way. In just that we will give it consideration if it's necessary once the people are on board.
Yes, we will give it consideration as the workload goes through. And of course, the advantage of having an increase in the planning fees is there is more scope. Now, workload goes up, the fees go up, we can get people in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Raby?
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to, agree that if we want to get things done, we need to give the Chief Executive the resources to do things. We're wanting to move at pace. We're wanting to achieve a lot, and I think we're going to do things together as a council. We as an administration want to get things done, but I know that our fellow councillors in the Conservative and Green Group are also desperate to do the best things for our residents whilst Horsham District Council is in existence, and get as much done as possible to make it as good as possible to hand on to any future administration. And I also think it's absolutely crucial that we have effective comms. There's a lot of cynicism generally in politics that voting makes no difference. There's no difference. They're all the same. This is a new administration, and we are doing things differently, and it's quite good to show that. And sometimes there are things that are non-political that we do, and it's important the public knows that. For example, we all collectively voted to move the council to this building, which is fantastic. Wonderful words from Councillor Circus supporting that move. And there also seems to be some confusion in the public that it was a Lib Dem project. So I think, to avoid cynicism, it's really important that the public knows that. And I found that knocking on doors, I've heard that said back to me, and I've explained it. And I think there must be a better way of communicating with our district rather than doing it door by door. So I think it's really important we have an effective comms strategy, and it gives people faith in democracy. There's horrible populist movements across the world, and one of the best inoculations against that is for local people to know that their elected members, us, are not acting cynically. And I've agreed with many of the things that the last Conservative administration did, and I'm sure there is agreement with some of the things that we do. We've had many unanimous votes here, although Councillor Circus said it's rare for him to fully agree with Councillor Boffey. Actually, we've had a lot. In the spirit of Christmas was a line that was repeated multiply in one meeting. So I just think that collectively, we want people to have faith in democracy. We're all here to work for the benefits of our residents, and a good comm strategy shows that our work together, and a lot of it is collective and unanimous. We want to tell our residents, you voted, you put us here, and we're doing good things for you. And that will keep good people being elected and prevent cynical people twisting things and sowing doubt and discord. So I couldn't be more passionate about having a good comms strategy for all of us to share the good work we're doing on the council. So I fully recommend this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I'm minded to support this for sure. Sounds like, if Jane asked for it, I would very much want to support that. However, I would like an assurance that it won't be comms for a political purpose. So really just for the council and its work. So if we can just have an assurance on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. This post will report to me. It will be reporting on the work of the council, not on any political party. It will be an apolitical post, as all our posts are apolitical. We don't have any political posts at the council.
Thank you for that assurance.
Councillor Bateman.
It's just to make a point that hasn't actually been said yet, which is that if we need to have proactive communication, to be able to talk about the good things that are happening, but not to have a head of comms in the event of something disastrous happening in our community is actually quite problematic, in my opinion. You have to have somebody there for crisis communications and reactive comms, and if we don't have one, actually we're doing our community a disservice. So it's just that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Boffey, do you wish to make any closing comments as the proposer?
No, thank you, Chairman. I think we've all covered everything, and I'm happy to go to the vote. Thanks.
Okay, fine. Let's all go to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 329 of your agenda, please show. Okay, any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. We'll now move to item 11, reports of representatives. Do any members who represent the council or any outside bodies wish to make any reports? Doesn't sound like it. Right, let's move on to item 12, the notice of motion. We have received one notice of motion. The time allowed for this item is 30 minutes. If we do reach the 30-minute limit, then we as a council will need to consider whether we wish to extend it. I therefore invite Councillor Ellis-Brown to present this motion.
Thank you, Chair. Before I move on the motion, unfortunately Mike can't be here this evening, and I'm sure you'll join me in wishing Mike a speedy recovery as he's been to hospital today.
No, certainly here.
Thank you. Hopefully it will not have passed any members by the local government. By that local government is currently undergoing a fundamental restructuring driven by December 24 white paper and the subsequent English devolution bill. I do wonder how well our residents understand what's about to happen though, and I commend our leader and the chief exec for their recent efforts in spreading the word around our parishes. The devolution bill has the potential, and I stress potential, to ensure that gains made by local authorities working in conjunction with other engaged organisations to both protect and enhance local areas for the benefit of climate and nature are not lost through reorganisation. Locally, this would include retaining the commitments to achieving carbon neutral and other ongoing actions resulting from our 2023 declaration of a climate and ecological emergency, such as the Declaration for River Recovery and continued support for Wilder Horsham District. However, as many members will be all too aware, such aspirations and climate and nature related actions are mostly not statutory requirements. And we all know that what can happen when financial push comes to shove. Indeed, I'm reminded of a recent press article claiming that West Sussex Send budget overspend would likely exceed 150 million this year. I consider that to counter this potential threat, the government needs to establish statutory bodies for climate and nature at the strategic authority level, alongside other proposed statutory duties as outlined in a recent letter from the South East Climate Action to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution. I am therefore proposing that this Council supports the recommendations made by SEC that are laid out in today's meeting papers, which in the interests of brevity I will trust that members have read. Accordingly, I move that Horsham District Council undertakes to write to the Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution, espousing these recommendations and expressing the wish that local gains in climate resilience and nature recovery made over the life of this and earlier councils will not be lost in the local government reorganisation process. I trust that members present tonight will sorry, apologies. I trust that members present tonight will feel able to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Chairman, I'm going
Thank
to
you,
second the
Councillor
motion.
Blackburn. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'll speak later.
Thank you. Council will now debate the motion before it. When the debate is finished, Councillor Ellis-Brown, as the mover of the motion, may then speak for a second time to exercise his right of reply. And I would remind members that you have a maximum of 5 minutes each if you wish to speak. Do any members wish to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Len, for bringing Councillor Croker's motion to the table. Speaking from the heart, this whole process for me as a councillor is very tricky because of my dyslexia and many elements. But the reason why I believe that I was voted in was because of my local people know my beliefs and my values, and that I speak a lot from the heart. So I just wanted to really kind of raise the awareness. There's a quote from Mary Oliver that goes, "Tell me what you're going to do with your one wild and precious life." This is us. This is our place now to speak to that. As long after the you know, how are we going to make our ancestors proud, and what are we going to do to make those who walk after us proud of us as their ancestors? So we're at such a point within our environmental world that we have to be that change. We have to be that change, and we have to be the voice of the humans that make a difference.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Thank you, Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to speak in support of this motion. I understand that the South East Climate Alliance that is mentioned in the motion is a very effective group of all the voluntary sector groups across the whole of the South East, and it came about as a result of people being concerned and being prepared to put their time aside to try and work with other like-minded people in order to ensure that people like ourselves on councils and in other statutory bodies were well aware of some of the issues and were taking action in order to move things forward in relation to prevention of climate difficulties. We all know that if statutory bodies don't have a specific statutory duty, they tend to do things in a less zealous way, let's put it, than if they do. And I think it's really important, therefore, that the new bodies, and I'm talking here both about the new unitary authorities as well as the devolved regional group, have a statutory responsibility to take forward the work that's been going on here, supported by Seeker, in relation to the climate emergency and nature recovery. And I think it's really important that we, as a district council, show our support for that.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Troller.
I remember at the beginning of the administration, or at least when I was voted, we very soon after a motion put forward by the Green Party declared a nature, what was it called?
Climate emergency.
Climate emergency, sorry, I lost my words there. And I voted in favor of it because I truly feel that there is a climate emergency, and I think it vital that we don't lose our declaration of that emergency as we are disbanded as an organization. So I think I'm fully supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Boffey.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say that obviously in my role I have lots of engagements with other partner councils around here, and also you know, at the district and borough level, and also with the county, and the upper tier authorities obviously are in the lead, the county councils and the city, in speaking to the ministry about what devolution is going to look like coming forward. But you know, we have dialogue with them about it, and it has been something on my mind, and it's been something about I've had in conversations with other leaders already about the fact that climate action and nature recovery very much needs to be on the mayor's agenda, whoever that is, and on the agenda of the combined authority as it is put together. And you know, there are references to it in the devolution white paper already, but it needs to be backed up and reiterated all the time. And you know, this motion tonight is a step along the way, and I'm happy with it. I support it, but this is the start, and I can give you all my assurance that it's very much on my mind, and it's something that I'll be pushing forward in those discussions and engagements wherever I can do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Buffy. Councillor Knoll.
Yeah, just to annoy the leader a bit more, I'm going to support him on this one. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it, yeah.
Councillor Fisher.
I just wanted to say it's good to see the council coming together on something so important, and I think I am very pleased to hear from Councillor Boffey that there is an appetite to make this the start, not the end of the work that we need to continue. So I fully support it, and think it's a very important thing that we ensure is on our minds and on the new devolution, wherever we end up with. Agenda also, and I just wanted to say a big thanks to Seeker for the work that they do and for bringing this forward, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Anyone else? Right. Councillor O'Sbrown, do you wish to make any closing comments?
No, thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Blackburn,
Thank you,
I
Chairman.
missed you down there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
That's a second. You wish to?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ellis-Brown, for bringing this motion, which I'm very pleased to second, not least as it requests a statutory role of responsibility for climate and nature at strategic authority level. While the government certainly recognises that the strategic authority has a leadership role to play in climate and biodiversity, a statutory role is intrinsically important, not least because currently the carbon budget for the UK is set nationally. And so it needs to be determined how strategic authorities are going to contribute to those carbon budgets when they have control of transport and renewable energy, for example. Now, councillors, if you approve this motion this evening, rather than merely send a generic copied version of that important Seeker letter, we have an opportunity to inform the Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretaries of State regarding the gains made across Horsham District and wider Sussex through vision, ambition and collaboration, particularly where nature recovery is concerned. It's a crucial part of the jigsaw in which Horsham District particularly excels. In other words, it will be useful to provide the Secretaries of State and Deputy Prime Minister with real-time, impactful results from a local authority in order to demonstrate that there is much to be gained by strategic authorities working closely with the new unitaries on climate and biodiversity actions. In turn, the new unitaries must ensure that the strong collaboration with parishes and community groups are maintained and enhanced, as their work at the community level is essential. As councillors know, Horsham District Council has been pushing hard on climate action and nature recovery for residents for some time now, as part of a wider community that is extremely self-starting and where species recovery is concerned, actually pioneering. Right in the middle of our district at Knepp sits a renowned rewilding experiment that is almost 25 years old. Other local landowners and managers have also taken bold action for nature recovery, including removing land drains, adapting farming practices, connecting habitats and restoring species, as well as looking to re-meander rivers, for example. HDC and the Sussex Wildlife Trust are partnered in Wilder Horsham District, the first collaboration of its kind in the country, and now potentially the subject of imitation at a local authority nearby. The Ada River Recovery Project and the Western Streams Partnership, also partnered with HDC, are making inroads with improving the quality of our waterways. I want to particularly signpost this progressive nature recovery work as it is a study in cooperation and ambition that ought to resonate with any government that cares about defending its natural capital. And because it aligns with an increased awareness across the world that nature recovery and climate action are utterly intertwined. At COP16 in October last year, 44 countries submitted biodiversity strategies and action plans that recognise that our food systems, societies and economies cannot be sustained if the quality of our land, sea and air are allowed to continue to decline at the rate that is happening now, particularly in the UK. The point was made at a Lord's debate last year that concerns about the environment has over the years become reduced to a narrow focus on climate change and net zero. I quote Lord Goldsmith. He said, "The reality is that we could put all the solar panels in the world on all the rooftops around the planet and invest 10 times more in energy efficiency. But if we do not massively ramp up our efforts to protect and restore nature, then it is all pointless." And that is why this notice of motion is so important. It is because Horsham District Council can help to signpost the way. As well as requesting the statutory powers for new strategic authorities, Seeker's letter emphasises that climate and nature action must be embedded as principles across disciplines, as health outcomes are, and HDC can demonstrate some success with this kind of thinking. In addition, Seeker's letter entreats that outcomes are measurable, ambitious, and include local results, a good example of which is the locally analysed data currently being scrutinised at West Sussex County Council, as well as that authority's local nature recovery strategy. Further, the embedding of these principles in all policies will ensure that policies enhance each other rather than work against each other, and top-down and bottom movement of collaboration will ensure all levels of government and beyond are in concert. This ask is utterly crucial because real lasting climate action and nature recovery cannot happen without all tiers of national and local government working in collaboration with parishes, neighbourhoods and community groups. Councillors, I ask you to approve this motion and I ask Councillor Ellis, I thank Councillor Ellis Brown once again for bringing it here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I assume you don't wish to make any further comment? No, all right. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. Moving now to item 13, members' questions of notice. There have been no questions from members. Urgent business, there have been no matters of urgent business. I therefore declare the meeting closed. Thank you all very much indeed. Good evening.